Hi everyone, and welcome to A Stitch in Time. Today is Wednesday, March 16th, 2022, and this is episode 213. My name is Carol, my Ravelry name is Knits and Pearls, and I live in the Fraser Valley of British Columbia, Canada, not too far from Vancouver. Hope you've all had a lovely week. Mine has been excellent and very productive besides. In fact, I have two finished projects to share with you today. But before I do, I just want to remind you that the Year of the Stash Make-Along is taking place in the A Stitch in Time podcast Ravelry group. So feel free to jump in anytime, come by and check it out. Just read the first post in all of the relevant threads and that'll give you all the information you need to know to join in. So hope to see you there. First up are my March socks from the Personal Sock Yarn Club, which is a component of the Year of the Stash Make-Along. And here they are. They are knit from Fiber Nymph Dye Works Bedazzled Base in the All That Was Green and Glorious colorway. It's a 64 stitch top-down sock. So if you've been watching for the last couple of episodes, you'll know that these started out as this pattern, Sockatoa by Sarah Jordan. This is a short row sock that has a triangular gusset that sits at the back of the leg and then on the bottom of the foot. And it was a new pattern and a new to me technique, and I thought I would give it a try. But as much as I enjoyed knitting them up, it turned out that this design did not fit my foot very well. I ended up with too much fabric in the instep and heel area, which would be ideal if you had a nice high instep, but they just didn't fit me. So I decided to default to my usual coordinating short row heel. So I had this mini in my stash. It's also from Fiber Nymph Dye Works. It's the Bounce Base in the Warm Honey colorway. But instead of doing my usual yarn over short row heel, I decided that I would try a German short row heel again. I had done that method for the Sockatoa socks and I think it was only the second time I had done it. And I'm not sure why I never stuck to this method, because German short rows are my favorite method of doing short rows. So anyway, I decided to give them another try. I found a video that explained how to do them in a coordinating color, which I will link below, and was really happy with how they turned out. And when you add in a coordinating or contrasting color, you end up with a tail on either end of the heel, which is very handy for kind of closing up any little holes or stretch stitches you might have. But in general, I think I would have been fine without even doing that. So I really like how they turned out. There's only one problem, and I'm gonna see if you can see what it is. One of these things is not like the other. So play a little Sesame Street guessing game along with me and see if you can tell what it is. If you say that one heel is smaller than the other, you would be correct. So here's what happened. I wanted to insert the heel in the center of this stripe, and so I found the center of the yarn that made up that stripe, tied a little knot, slip knot, and then I knit up to that point. And then I rearranged the stitches on my needle so that I had 32 stitches on each needle with the tail coming off the appropriate end. Then I proceeded to do my heel, and then once I finished the heel, I picked up that tail end of yarn and the working end of the main color and just kept going. So you can see it's nicely centered there. Well, I finished this sock, no problem. And I had been working back and forth on both of the socks. So I finished the toe on that sock, started knitting the toe on this sock, and then I realized that I had a different number of stitches on each of the needles. And then I realized what had happened is when I had shifted the needles, stitches on the needles to do the heel, I had ended up with 30 stitches on the heel needle and 34 stitches on the instep needle. And so this toe, or this heel, has turned out a little bit smaller. Meant my stitches were not evenly distributed, so I had to take it back to the beginning of the toe and rearrange them. And it means that because this heel is a little bit bigger, not only is it a little bit looser around the heel area, but it also kind of throws it off as far as sizing goes. And I'm not sure if you'll be able to tell or not. You can see here that if you match up the length, it doesn't match up that way. So this sock is a little bit longer and a little bit looser than this one. And I haven't completely decided what I'm going to do with it. My husband thinks I'm crazy if I rip back and redo the heel. On the other hand, this one actually fits a little bit better with having a little bit smaller heel. And so I'm really tempted to take this one back and purposely knit it over less stitches. But for now, I am not going to do that. For now, I am going to wear them tomorrow for St. Patrick's Day. I was really hoping I would have them finished in time to do that. And then once I do that, I'll have a better sense of how they feel on my feet and whether it's that noticeable, whether I care enough to do that or not. I had put them on and he said he couldn't tell the difference when they were on my feet. And even when I had them out on the blocking boards after washing them, he said he couldn't even tell. So I am tempted to leave them. We'll just see how it goes. All right, so second finished project, you may have guessed I'm wearing it. This is my Knit Me Baby One More Time. And rather than just show it to you this way, I have recorded a little clip that I'll put in here, and then you can get a better look at it on me, and I'll tell you all about it. So I'll be right back after that. Have you ever been lucky enough to have a project turn out more or less exactly as you had hoped? Well, this is one of those for me. The pattern is called Knit Me Baby One More Time by Mary Annarella. Her design company is Lyrical Knits. I made it from yarn from All Points North Yarn Company, which is a British Columbia based yarn dyer, and I used 3 colors of the Sweet Sock base. The green is Olive View, the speckled is Raindrops, and then the navy is Anchors Away. So I'm going to give you a quick spin so you can see it from all angles, and then I'll talk a little bit more about it. So there it is from the front, and the side, and the back. I'm going to come a little bit closer. That'll give you a little bit better look. Plus, I wanted to show you the pictures here from the original sample. So as you can see, it was originally knit in 2 colors with the yoke and the bottom ribbing in one color and then the rest of the sweater in another. But what really caught my eye was this version by Judy Knits a Lot Now on Ravelry. I really liked the graduated stripes, and I also liked the way the top and bottom colors picked up the colors of the speckles in the 3rd yarn. And so that's what I modeled my version after. So I knit the 38-inch version, which gives me 0 to 1 inch of positive ease depending on what weight I am at the moment. It tends to fluctuate. And I knit it more or less as written, except I did substitute 1x1 twisted rib for the 2x2 rib that the pattern called for. And I moved the waist shaping from the sides to 1/4 of the way in from each side on the front, and then 1/3 of the way in on the back. And I did include this faux seam that runs up each side. It's a really great way to hide striping so you don't end up with a big jog. I'm not even sure which side I added the yarn at the moment, and I decided to carry that through into the sleeve, even though it didn't call for that. When I showed this project to you last episode, I was on the bottom ribbing, but I kind of was going to put that on hold and do the sleeves because I was worried that I wouldn't have enough of this Raindrops colorway to finish the sleeves. As it turned out, I did have enough and then some very little then some. So I didn't have to redo this section. I had thought that if necessary, I would move these stripes up a little bit and then take some of the yarn out of the middle for the sleeves. I didn't have to do that. But what did end up happening is I realized that I wanted the sweater to be about 1 inch longer than it was going to turn out. And my initial thought was I would just add an extra inch of ribbing. But I decided against that. The pattern calls for about 2 inches of ribbing on the bottom and then 1 inch around the neck and the cuffs. And I felt like maybe 3 inches of ribbing would just be a little bit too much and unbalanced. Plus, I think on the project that I modeled this after, I think she began her striping a little bit earlier. At least in the photo that I had, it looked like there wasn't much space between the bottom of the ribbing and the beginning of the stripes, where I had not begun the stripes until after I had split for the sleeves and body. So I thought maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to balance that out with a little bit of stockinette on the bottom. So what I ended up doing is ripping back to here, doing about 1 inch of stockinette, and then doing 2 inches of ribbing. And I'm really, really happy with that decision. Before I blocked the sweater, it fit really well, but it was a little bit airy. I knew being a superwash yarn or superwash wool that it would probably stretch out after blocking, and that is exactly what happened. It ended up being about 2 inches longer. And so what I did after it dried, I just took a couple of towels and put the sweater into a warm dryer with those towels for less than 10 minutes. And that was just enough to like suck everything up again. And so what I like about it is it's now the length I like, without being too tight around. And also I like that the fabric is a little bit more solid, not quite as airy as when I had first knit it. And that's partly just because the yarn bloomed and then the stitches kind of tightened up when it went into the dryer. So don't be afraid to do that. Just be very careful. Keep checking. You don't want to leave it too long, and you definitely don't want to do that with a non-superwash wool. I have done that, and it's not a pretty sight when you're done. I haven't done it intentionally, but it has happened. So yeah, I really like this sweater, and I can see myself knitting it again, kind of using it as a blueprint for a fingering weight sweater. I like that the neckline comes down a little ways. Quite often when you have a top-down sweater, the necklines are often like a crew neck, maybe a high V, but I like how this is a little bit more scooped. You do start at the top. You cast on the stitches for the back, you do some short row shaping, then you pick up along each shoulder and you work down a little ways, and then you pick up stitches for the sleeve cap right along that edge, and then you start knitting the body, including the sleeves. So you increase along here for the sleeves, eventually you join around for the neck, and then when it's the appropriate length you separate for the sleeves and then carry on as you normally would with a top-down sweater. So I like that there's an option that's not a raglan, because most top-down sweaters tend to be, or I shouldn't say that, but a lot of top-down sweaters tend to be raglan construction, and there's nothing wrong with that. I have several that I quite like, but I liked this idea of having this option. So I'll come a little bit closer. You can see how it looks like a set-in sleeve, but it's not. You work it as you go, so you don't have any seaming, which is always a bonus. I did include one purl stitch down each side kind of as a side seam. What I like doing that when you are switching colors, because that helps to disguise that shift of color, so you don't end up with that really obvious, you know, one row off that often happens when you're striping with, you know, with one or more colors that jog. So I did do that, and then I included that also on the sleeves, even though the pattern didn't call for that, because I thought it would do that. Not like you would see that area quite as much, but I thought I would just carry it on with that. So I think that's about all I have to say about this sweater. Yeah, I just am so pleased with how it turned out. It's been done at just the right time, because it's kind of the right weather now to wear a short sleeved sweater. Pretty soon it's going to get too warm. And a little while ago it would have been too cold. So I'm really happy to finish it in time for spring. And tomorrow's St. Patrick's Day, so I've got my green on for that. So one more last look, and back to the episode. So I get to wear both of my new finished projects tomorrow for St. Patrick's Day. I was hoping to finish them in time, so I'm glad it all worked out. I forgot to mention that I also knit these socks for the Fibernymph Dye Works Meomel, which stands for Make It Your Own, Make Along. I highly encourage you to check it out. It's taking place in the Fibernymph Dye Works Ravelry group. It just kicked off at the beginning of the month, and so far it's been lots of fun to chatter with other people and to see the projects that they're making. I only have one work in progress to talk about this week, and it is another sweater by Mariana Rella of Lyrical Knits. This one's called Throwback Thursday. It's the fingering weight version, and as you can see, it's a very casual long sleeve pullover with a rounded neck, some cable and lace detail along the side, and a split hem. I am knitting mine out of Malabrigo Arroyo in the Jupiter colorway, and that is color 049. I'm very happy with how it's knitting up so far. I have about 5 inches to go in the body. So here it is. I have been alternating skeins throughout, carrying either 2 or 3 strands at a time. Each of the skeins is different, and I wanted to avoid any obvious places where the skeins ended and began, and I wanted to distribute the colors as much as I could, or as evenly as I could. So I'm pretty happy with how it's knitting up so far. As you can see, I have already done the rolled neck, and I'll give you a close-up of the yarn here. And I'll also give you a close-up of the cable and lace pattern that runs along each side. There you go, that gives you a good look. So this pattern is constructed very much like the one I'm wearing, and but it doesn't have any waist shaping. And so I have taken the waist shaping from this sweater and incorporated it into this one. But once again, I located my increases and decreases about 25% of the way in from the side on the fronts, and about 1/3 of the way in from the sides on the back. And that just happens to fit my shape better. If I have a sweater that has increases and decreases along the side, I often end up with sort of a flare at the hips, and I'd rather it not do that. So that's where I generally place my waist shaping. Let's see what else. So as I mentioned, this is the fingering weight version, but I'm using a sport weight yarn. The reason I'm doing that is that the original sample was knit from La Bien-Aimée Sport, so I thought that this would be a contender, and I am getting the correct gauge with it. My only concern is that I may not have enough yarn to do long sleeves. So I had previously used this yarn for another sweater. I had knit Granito by Joji Locatelli, But when it was all said and done, I didn't like the way it fit and I didn't like the way it looked on me. So I took it all apart and washed and reskeined the yarn. So I took a look back at the podcast I had done where I had shown my finished granito and talked about it. And even though the sweater itself, it was bigger, it was also knit more loosely. I went down a needle size for this sweater. And so I just am not sure if I'm going to have enough yarn. So I have this much. That's what I'm working on right now. As you can see, I've got a couple little balls and then one much larger one that I'm working off of at the moment. And then I have this much left. But then I have this whole bag full of little bits and pieces. When I did granito, it had some pockets, and it also was constructed similarly from the top, so I had a lot of small amounts. So I am hoping between all of that, I'll have enough for long sleeves. I will break into these if necessary. If it doesn't look like I'm going to make it, I may just go ahead and order another skein of this yarn to finish. I am trying to use up stash, but at the same time I want to end up with a sweater that I'm completely happy with. And I really do think I'll prefer this sweater with long sleeves. So I'm just going to knit, and see what happens. I'll make my decisions, you know, along the way as it becomes obvious whether or not I'll have enough yarn. But in the meantime, I'm just really enjoying this. I've tried it on, it fits really nice, and I think it's a sweater that I can, you know, see myself wearing quite a bit once it's done next winter, because I definitely don't think I'm going to have it done in time to wear this year. But that's okay. I'll have something to look forward to next year. That is it for all the knitting this week. I'm just going to take a quick sip of tea before I continue. I have pulled out my spring-themed David's tea mug. There are no dandelions here yet, but we do have crocuses blooming, and there are some daffodils that are just about ready to pop. And then there's various trees and shrubs that have buds on them. So spring is definitely around the corner, and I don't think it can come soon enough. We're in that blah period, you know, that end of winter, just before spring, when everything's gray. And I think we're all ready for some warmer temperatures and more color in our world. So the most exciting thing that happened since we last spoke is that Cameron and I went and spent the weekend with my mom. We had not seen her since last September. She didn't come down for Christmas this year because at that time Omicron was really raging and they were gathering restrictions in place. Plus, the highway that leads to her home was closed because of damage it had suffered during the atmospheric river events that had occurred back in November. So the highway opened again about a month ago now. And it was interesting to see the repairs that they had put into place. So in one area, there had been a waterfall that had obviously grown considerably with all of that rain and washed out the entire road. So there's now a single lane bridge there, and you have to wait your turn and then go across in a convoy with a pilot vehicle. So that's obviously just a temporary fix because eventually they'll have to do something so they can accommodate, you know, both lanes of traffic. The other major area had been a railway overpass, and the highway went under. That all got washed out. So now they've built up the highway and created a level crossing. So there are warning lights and, you know, flashing signals and bars that come down when the train is going. So there's lots of warning. But again, that will just be a temporary fix, I'm sure, because it doesn't seem very practical to have a level crossing on a major highway. But it was nice to be able to travel it once again. We could see a few other areas where there had obviously been debris flows across the road, and they've been cleared. So we got there about 7:15 Friday night, just in time to pick my mom up and head over to the pub for dinner. They are only open till 10 o'clock on Friday nights. It's a small town, what can I say? And the kitchen closes at 8, so we had to have our orders in by 7:45. So we made it there in plenty of time, had dinner there. And also some friends of ours joined us there after a little while, had a visit with them. They were leaving for holidays on Saturday morning. We didn't think we'd get to see them, but it turned out so that we did. And it was really funny because it's a couple, and the woman had just gotten new glasses, and she was looking across the table at me, and she said, "Do you notice anything?" And it turned out we both had the same pair of glasses. I had gotten mine, I think, about 2.5 or 3.5 years ago, but she had just gotten hers, so it was quite funny that, yeah, they were exactly the same. Once before, we had gone to an event, and we both had very similar red tops on, so I guess we both just have good taste. Great minds think alike and all that. So we went out to the cabin on Saturday morning just to check things out. My mom had a few things to take back, and just kind of make sure everything was okay. There was still about maybe 1.5 feet of snow in the yard, so we just parked outside the gate and climbed over. It was funny because in some areas the snow had quite a crust on it, so we could just walk on top of it, and then all of a sudden your foot would go through and you have to drag it out. So didn't make for much, you know, it wasn't very easy to walk around very much, but we kind of checked out the cabins, made sure everything was okay. Tried to see if the water was running out of the pipe that we connect up for our drinking water, but it was out of sight behind snow. So hopefully all the work we did on the spring last fall, we put in a new, not exactly a new water system, but improved part of the system, and hopefully it all worked and that we have running water come this spring. So yeah, we just had a very relaxing weekend. Other than that, we hung out at my mom's. We watched a lot of the Brier curling championships. That's Canadian men's championships. I cooked jambalaya for supper on Saturday night. My mom loves it. I always make it for her when she comes to our house. So she asked me to actually bring up ingredients enough to make her a whole batch that she could put in the freezer. So I made a double batch. We had some of it for dinner, and then she froze all the leftovers. So she'll have quite a number of meals for a while to come. And then we ordered Chinese food in on Sunday, so didn't have to do lots of cooking. Just hung out. It was really a nice, relaxing weekend. It was good to spend time with my mom. Kind of missed her, and yeah, it was just really nice. We headed home late morning on Monday. We had a big, bacon and eggs kind of breakfast or brunch, I guess, before we left. Had a good, uneventful trip home. Came home, did a bit of grocery shopping, and then just settled in for the evening. So very, very nice. Long weekend away. Just what I think we both needed right now. That's about it. So my something good for this week is something delicious. When we got together as a family just over a week ago for dinner, my son-in-law brought a pot of potato soup, and it was so good. I asked for the recipe, so I made it again last week. It's called The Ultimate Potato Soup Recipe by Sam Merritt, and it is from the website sugarspunrun.com. I'll put a link to it down below, or on the show notes, I should say. I guess they come up on the side on YouTube. Anyway, I just did half a recipe. I did us for dinner, and then we each had some for lunch the next day. And yeah, it was just delicious, so flavorful. The only thing I did different is it calls for ancho chili powder, which I don't even know what that is, but I just substituted in a few chili flakes and served it with a bit of shredded cheddar cheese and some green onion chopped up, and it was delicious. So if you're looking for a potato soup recipe, I highly recommend this one. So there's not going to be another episode until the week of April 3rd to 8th. Our grandkids are on spring break starting next week, and although I won't have them every day, I'm going to have them some days for the next 2 weeks. Their older sister and I are kind of going to split things up so that she gets a bit of a spring break too. Plus she's doing a work experience on both weeks for I think 1 day a week. So it just is not very conducive to recording when the young ones are around, and then if they're not here, I'm sure I'm going to want to have that time to catch up on some things and just have some quiet days here. So look for another episode sometime in the week of April 3rd to 8th. Hopefully by then I'll have lots more things to show you. I'm anxious to start some new projects. I definitely need to knit myself a new pair of slippers. I've been putting it off and putting it off and putting it off, and I just can't anymore. Last week I actually kind of slipped in my slippers and bent one of my toenails back, and it was very painful. It kind of caught on the fabric inside my slipper, and it's like, okay, I also kind of slipped going up the stairs. They've stretched out a lot, and they're just not that comfortable and not that safe to wear anymore. So definitely got to make myself a new pair of slippers. I'm also going to cast on a new pair of socks because I've got some time between now and April 1st when the Personal Sock Yarn Club is ready to go again. So looking forward to that, and of course I'll work on my Throwback Thursday. So yeah, hopefully a few weeks from now I'll have lots of new projects to share with you. So of course the March chatter thread will wrap up before then, and the February Personal Sock Yarn Club will also wrap up by March 31st. So on my next episode I will announce the winners of all of those components of the Year of the Stash. So be sure to tune in then to find out if you're one of the lucky winners. So thank you as always for watching. Thank you as always for all of your kind comments. I have been slacking this past week, and I don't think I've answered any or many of the YouTube comments, but I'm planning to do that before this episode goes live. I like to kind of make sure I finish one before I post another. So I have kind of glanced over them. Thank you for taking the time to write. And also thanks to everyone who continues to take part in the Year of the Stash. It's really fun to see so much participation. So have yourselves a couple of good weeks ahead. I know some of you, I'm sure, will have children home on spring break, so I hope you enjoy that time together. And yeah, maybe by the time we talk again, spring will really be here. I hope so. So yeah, take care until I see you again, and enjoy your knitting.